Direct from Fort Meade, Maryland, this is DINFOS Live.
All right, folks, so welcome back to another episode of DINFOS Live. Just for clarification, we are inside the amazing Studio One at the Defense Media Activity, but this is actually a Defense Information School production. Again, it was a question that was asked, and we just wanted to clarify that this is designed to teach you some things that maybe are beyond the classroom, that you got a question that's out there, and that's why we invite you to get online and ask us questions of the subject. Speaking of that, today we're going to kind of have a unique show for you. It's a little bit of a split show. Today we're going to be talking about the MTT program. That's the mobile training team. And then about halfway through, we're going to switch it over, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the DoD Awards Program, which is a program that I manage. So with me today, joining me on set is Miss Melissa Mel Weatherspoon. She said, don't use Melissa, because only her mom
calls me Mel.
calls her that. Mel, thanks for joining me. You can take that off with fist bump. And I think we'll go ahead and get into this.
Okay.
We're going to have a seat. Get
good.
settled in, and then I'll give you the host hat halfway through, and you can ask me some questions.
You know, you put me in the hot seat straight up. I'm usually on the other side of the camera.
Well,
so
welcome to the light side.
Yeah.
It's fun.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah. So tell me, first off, about your position, who you are, what you do.
So, like you said, I'm Mel Weatherspoon. I am the Defense Information School Mobile Training Team Program Manager. What that means is it's like, as we do the hashtag beyond the classroom, I take that stuff beyond the classroom to our clients out there in the Department of Defense, in the public affairs and visual information community. And we've had to be a little creative in the last year and a half.
That's so mobile.
Funny story. I got hired in March of 2020, 10 days prior to the quarantine. And I'm like, I'm the mobile training team program manager. How's that going to work, right? So we've been creative and innovative over the last maybe almost a year and a half. And we figured out how to take the mobile training team concept to our clients out there, whether it's virtual now, we can do virtual training. We can do in-person training, again, very limited because of the COVID travel restrictions. Or we can do a hybrid as we're getting ready to do right now with the U.S. Army Alaska. We did a couple of days of virtual training earlier this month, and we have a Marine Sergeant getting boots on the ground in September to go do some graphics training hands-on out there in Alaska. So,
awesome.
So it's been really interesting to figure out, what's the definition of mobile now that we can't necessarily travel all the time.
Right.
And DINFOS Live was born from that concept and how we can take what's going on at the schoolhouse to our clients out there throughout the world.
Sure. A lot can be done virtually.
Right.
Very good. Who's helping you behind the scenes? You got somebody answering questions with you today, or how are we doing that?
Well, I'm an army of one, to use that old slogan, in the mobile training team program, but I work very closely with the DINFOS PAO, Pete Robertson, and Pete's in the control room. How you doing, Pete? And he'll be answering the questions. However, after the show, we'll get in there, and probably you will too, as we transition over to your program here very shortly, and we'll be able to answer those questions.
Okay, perfect. And then with us in studio, as always, Sergeant Ben Whitten, doing a fine job. He'll be taking your questions virtually, so online. So, people ask questions, and then we'll interrupt, and we'll have him ask some questions. Hopefully we get some people online. So thanks for joining us today and joining us here on set. All right, what do you say? Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
Tell me a little more about the MTT program. Like I guess inception. You said when you were hired.
Like we talked about, it was, it's kind of been a very interesting year and a half in the mobile training team program. And when I was hired on, that's when it officially became a program at the Defense Information School. So basically our 3 lines of effort, are skill gap training. We can export courses. Right now we're trying that out with one of our courses. And then eventually getting into the international training of our partners and allies overseas, as we saw with a team going over to Morocco in May.
African Lion.
Yeah, so cool. We do skill gap training, and what that really is, for example, if you have a unit that's getting ready to deploy, Or if you're just going over your training qualifications for the people in your unit and you notice, hey, you know, we have a gap in this specific skill. We really need to work on our writing. Or we don't really have any folks who really are that great at graphics. We have a gap in that billet, but we really need to know how to build an infographic. You can give us a call and or send us an email, and we'll help you figure out a way to get that training to you to close that skill gap. So that's that line of effort. The other one, as we're figuring out that the virtual world is a really good place for us to be, or we do have some courses that are short enough to where we can send an instructor to you, or maybe 2, maybe 3, and train 24 people. That's the allotted number of seats in a course, and all of your people get certified in that course. And the example that I have for you right now is the Intermediate Public Affairs Specialist course, known as IPASC. We have scheduled into the school calendar 3 mobile training events for IPASC. And next year in fiscal year 22, we're going to very arduous places. We're going to Japan and Hawaii to train some folks.
Tough.
We do still have one date open next June. If you have some folks who you need to get trained up in IPASC, and they get the certification because we take the instructors with us, and they do exactly the same thing during that 2-week period as if they were in the schoolhouse.
Makes sense. And then you save the TAD cost. You only send in.
Right, you're bringing 3 people over there, but you're getting 24 people trained.
Right.
So, you know, that's a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah, all that per diem.
Absolutely.
For 24 people. Would
Exactly. So that's kind of a new concept.
Math, Marine.
Yeah.
I just did.
Well, you know, wasn't going to say that. Kind of reminds me of our trip to Camp Lejeune a few years ago.
Sure.
So we won't get into that right now. So that was a lot of hours of just Mel and Chad talking about whatever. But anyway, we'll get back to the subject. So we do still have one available set of dates in June of 2022. If there's a unit or a geographical location that's interested in bringing IPASC to you, just got to give me a call. I did want to say real quick that IPASC is being totally redone to be more up to speed with what that course needs to be. It's in rewrite right now, so that's going to be very exciting. They're piloting that in December, and then we're getting on the road with it, as well as the in-house classes that they're going to do.
Cool.
So that's pretty much the MTT program thus far.
So you talked about a unit, requesting. Who all can request? I mean, who's it eligible to, I guess?
So the DINFOS MTT program is specifically for the DoD community of public affairs and visual information professionals, sorta.
I figured it was complicated.
It's a little complicated, but when you talk about the skill gap training and you talk about taking IPASC on the road, that's mainly for our already trained public affairs and visual information community. Now, that's not just our folks in uniform. That also includes field activities like defense media activity. We're working right now with the National Security Agency. Did I say that right? National Security Agency, NSA, to do some public affairs training with them. So we can do Department of Defense entities outside of just those units who are in uniform.
Okay.
So that's kind of how that works out. And the complicated part of that is we can also train media relations for folks who may not necessarily be in public affairs or visual information. We're working right now with a DoD organization to go train some of their leaders in media engagement. So
it could relieve some pressure from from staffs out there. Okay. Interesting.
The best thing to do is just get a hold of me and say, hey, Mel, can you do this?
Yeah.
And we'll talk it out.
When in doubt, ask,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt to ask, just say.
And worst you can say is, hey, sorry, we can't do that, but here's some references for you.
Right,
or something.
right,
Go to
absolutely.
Pavilion. A little plug for Pavilion.
Well, you do the plug for Pavilion, but at the very bottom of the Pavilion homepage is a link to get a hold of me. So you can do it that way. Yep.
Good. So how is it done? If a unit wants to request, how is that done? You said get a hold of you, or did just email you direct, or is there a website?
Well, you can
talk
get
about
on
references in a minute, but
right. You can get on the DINFOS website, and I know we have the URL to get on the DINFOS website. It's under academics, and it says Mobile Training Team.
Okay.
There's a link to get a hold of me via email there. Typically, the request comes through an email or a phone call or something of the sort. And then we start getting down into the planning phases.
Okay.
I really like to spend some time with the unit to really get down to what it is they're looking for. Because what we do is we take curriculum that we already have in the schoolhouse and we adapt it to them to meet their need. But it does take some planning and preparation, because we just don't want, it's not a one size fits all, off the shelf kind of training. We
Right.
really do want to work with you and really get to what you need.
So I can imagine a unit not wanting that. Like, just give me some generic something and we'll figure it out. Like I
Right.
would think everyone would want something that, what is your end goal? How do we get there? And then you help work on it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very cool. So you talked about it a little bit, when we opened up, but with the COVID state, now we're kind of going back into it. You notice we're masked before we come on set.
Right.
We've got our distance and everything. How are you conducting the MTTs, during the restricted travel and stuff like that? I know some places you are able to go to, but what is the virtual environment like for that?
Well, it's interesting because, like I was saying in the very beginning, we're like, oh, we're a mobile training team program, but we can't go anywhere. So I really started talking to some people I know and doing some networking. Been around this business a couple of years anyway. Yeah. And people who had already had some in-person requests in and said, you know what, let's try some things out, right? So I found out that we have access to Blackboard collaboration that the schoolhouse already has. And so we started playing around with that. Want to give Jen Howard a big shout out because she was very helpful to me. So we started playing around with that. How can we use Blackboard Collaborate to invite people in to do the training? So we tried it, it worked. So we have that option in front of us. We've also done some things with Microsoft Teams because people are using that platform in their organizations and they just invite us in, we present, we have the conversation, and we do it that way. There are platforms out there we can do. We've done phone conversations. I've actually sat in a classroom with my computer linked up to somebody. Here's an interesting story for you. I had a gentleman call me. He was getting ready to deploy to Africa, but it had been a long time since he had been in the public affairs course. And he's like, I just need a little refresher on this topic. Well, the public affairs course, now the public affairs communication strategy qualification course, was just about to go over that topic. So I sat in the classroom and had him dial in, and he just listened. And
very cool.
And then we had a one-on-one conversation. There was another of our instructors who had just come back from Djibouti, and so they had that conversation one-on-one on the phone. And he's already on his way back. It's been about a year now, and he knew that DINFOS was there for him when he needed what he needed at his destination, and it was pretty cool. So
That's
I've
awesome.
done one-on-ones. I've done up to 50 people, lunch and learns over lunchtime. We're pretty adaptive.
Awesome. So I've got a couple more questions for you, but
Okay.
we do, I think, now have some
Okay.
questions online.
Awesome.
We definitely want to get to those. So, Sergeant Whitten, what do you got? Hit us with something over there.
Well, we actually had two questions that were asked and already answered before I could even tell you.
Oh, goodness.
All right.
So
Mel.
y'all are living in the future on this one.
Killing it. That's Pete working his
That's
magic
Pete
down
out there, right?
So we do have a question that we could get to. We have Kathy O'Keefe asks, will the distance and digital training continue even after, the pandemic and concerns for that are no longer around?
That's actually a great question because, we had that little window of, we started to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And we really had a conversation about that. I had a conversation with the leadership, and economically, it makes sense. There are topics and our training objectives within the schoolhouse that, you can do an online virtual event with. Why spend the money to take a person out to, say, Alaska or wherever, when that's one of those topics, you can do conversation over a virtual platform. But there are some training topics that really do need to be one-on-one, a little bit more hands-on, like
Right.
we have
Practical.
more practical. So that's why we've decided that now we have 3 options. We can still do virtual if it's one of those training objectives. Even after this is all over, why not save the taxpayers money and do this virtually when we can? There's no travel, so it's a lot easier on the instructors if it's one of those topics that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or we can do hybrid, where maybe you have a little bit of training that you can do some pre-training and then get an instructor out. Now they're in person a shorter amount of time, which also saves money. We get them back to the schoolhouse and back to training the in-person courses. So that's what we would consider a hybrid event.
All makes perfect sense.
So I hope I answered your question. So,
And if you have other ones, and if we don't get to
Right.
them now, ask them and we'll answer them after
Absolutely.
the show is off the air, even if it's on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are options as well.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, what is that it? Do we have another one?
That's all we got for the
All
time
right.
being.
All
but
right,
I'll
good,
let
because
you
I
know
got
if we
more
get any
questions. So that's okay.
You're going
I'm
to keep me
curious.
in this hot seat way too long.
So
Okay.
what is the cost? I mean, obviously there's a TAD cost, but
Absolutely.
what is the cost for the instruction?
So if it's a virtual instruction, because we already have the Blackboard Collaborate
Yeah.
program that we use for other courses at the schoolhouse, so I'm just piggybacking off of that. It's no cost to the unit at all. Now, if you need one of my instructors to go to you,
Yep.
then you're paying travel and per diem costs. One of the lines of effort that we talked about was international. That's a little different, but for our DoD brothers and sisters out there in the public affairs and visual information community, you just need to pay for the instructor's travel and per diem cost.
Perfect. Still a better deal if you've got a
Absolutely.
unit going somewhere and you need
Yeah.
everyone in that unit or half of them, whatever, to get some refresher.
Right.
Still makes way more sense to bring 2
Absolutely.
or 3 instructors or even one.
And how often can you, like for the iPass course, is it reality that you can send 24 people back to the
You would have
schoolhouse
no one
for
there
2 weeks?
covering.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why we really like the whole idea of a geographic location. We did that with Fort Bragg, where we had different units come together to do it, and that was that was economical for them. But
Makes sense.
if
I
it's
mean,
virtual, it's
Some units may have the depth, they may have the bench to
might.
do that, but others, I've been
No.
in units that are 3 people, and and you're fighting the enemy off all
Right.
all areas. So, okay, no, that makes perfect sense. So I really only have one more for you, and that's
Okay.
where can people go? Like, what are resources that they can go to find out more about it?
So I think we have the URL that they put up a little earlier. That URL will take them to the mobile training team page on the DINFOS website.
Yep.
At the bottom, there's an email address and I think a phone number for me.
Perfect.
But that's the best place to get started. Also, on the very bottom of the Pavilion website, it links to the DINFOS Mobile Training Team page.
Okay.
And let's get the conversation started. That's the best way to get it
Yeah.
it going.
When in doubt, ask.
Just ask.
Cool. Good program.
So I will say that since the beginning of all of this, we've trained over 1,000 people.
That's awesome.
So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And
Yeah.
considering the situation, like
Yeah.
what we've been in the last year, the fact that you're able to train.
Got to
that many
earn your
people,
pay, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're able to kind of write this script as
Absolutely.
you go and develop. So
Why not get creative and figure out what to do? And I think that training in our career field is so important. So if I can bring the training to you, maybe just close that skill gap a little bit,
Yeah.
I think it's a win-win for everybody.
well, and a lot of a lot of units can't afford to get to send their people here for that amount of time, and so maybe you can break it up and give them some short,
Yeah.
give them a break.
Absolutely.
But a unit, a lot of them just can't say, hey, yeah, go launch. And I know it's career development, but we need you here. It's a reality.
Well, you just reminded me of something, and I do want to talk about this just a little bit,
Okay.
Because this just came to my mind as you were saying that before we switch roles for a second. I do want folks to know that we are very adaptive to the National Guard and the Reserve units. We can work on the weekends during their training times.
There you go.
And
Good
I think
point.
that's a very important piece of information I need to put out.
Yeah.
Apologize for not putting it out there, but we can adapt our work schedule to meet their needs, as well as adapt ourselves to time zones in the event that, like, we're working with some folks in Japan coming up here in September, that we can adapt to their time zone and flex our schedules. We want to be there for them. So, but I think the National Guard Reserve piece is really, really important.
No, that's a good point. And, because not all DoD employees are cookie cutter, like
Right.
they're not all created equal. And
They're not all on the East Coast.
No, and the reserve folks are very unique in that they've got a full-time job. And
Right.
they might not be able to leave that for that amount of time so they can get that training.
And they're very
Perfect stuff.
important to our mission, and we
Yeah.
need to make sure we're there for them. So
Yeah.
shout out to those folks.
Often forgotten of. So, and I'm actually going to talk about them a little bit too.
Oh,
So,
awesome.
Perfect. Hey, we do have a couple more online questions, I believe. So I'm with
We do got,
hit us before we transition here.
We're gonna switch roles. That's very scary,
Yeah,
isn't it, Sir
that's-
Wynn?
Oh boy, you gonna switch chairs too, or?
We're not gonna switch
No.
chairs, but we are gonna switch roles.
All right. Well, we do have a question from Staff Sergeant Myers. They ask, what about, as it relates to the MTTs, what about visual information or photo training? Will they be bringing any equipment or gear to train with?
Most of the time, that's a great question, by the way. Most of the time, we're going to be reliant on the gear that those folks have. We can't send a sergeant out there to, California and train and
24
bring the
kids with them.
equipment with us.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make sense anyway, because if you don't have the equipment, why are we training on it? So
Yeah.
that's one of those questions that we really get into in the planning and preparation stage. And what equipment do you have? What equipment are you using? That way our instructors are ready to teach them for that type of equipment.
That makes sense.
But that's a great question.
Yeah. Okay.
What else you got?
Good.
I believe that is all for the moment.
Okay.
We can
so-
always circle back. I mean, it's live. We can do whatever
Circle
we
back.
want.
Okay, we're
So-
live.
Okay, so we're going to wrap that part up, and
Okay.
I'm going to take off
Okay,
the
hold
host
on.
hat and woo-saw over there.
Yeah, we're going to switch roles over here. So, I'm letting everyone know I am no Chad McMeen, but I am going to switch roles for a minute, and I'm going to interview him about his awesome program that I think is very, very important to our career field, is giving all of you out there kudos and for all of the hard work you do. So, you ready to switch roles?
All right, let's do it.
So tell me who you are. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So just as you asked me in my program, tell me a little bit about your program.
Okay, so came on board in November, retired out of here. And
Me
then-
too.
Yeah, I know, crazy thing. But the timing was perfect, and landed this gig after many interviews in other places, but this was the perfect spot. And so in November, came on board, and this is a program that had been a collateral duty for
Mine
several.
too. Yeah, exactly.
It was just one of those things that people picked up and they did it, but it wasn't a full time like their focus, and so they were kind of having to split their duties with other people, and when you're doing that, it gets done.
Yeah.
But I was able to come in and really take a hard look at it, and it's taken a full, not even a full year,
Right.
and we're still. It's just it just lasts the whole year long. And I thought it was 3 months and it was over and
Right.
you move on, and there's so much behind the scenes and we want to make it better. So anyway, came out in November. We're now working towards opening the calendar year 21. And that's where we are. I enjoy it. So that's like the full-time job, and I somehow got roped into this one, which I also enjoy a lot.
Well, I might have had a little bit to do with that, but just for reference, Chad's program is the Department of Defense Media Awards Program. So just wanted to, I didn't know if we said that, so I wanted to make sure we got that
I think
in.
it's on the title, but yes.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that we got that in there. So, which, I was probably one of those people that believed it was like, you do 3 months and you're done.
Yeah.
But I think that the program will benefit for somebody who's really focused on it. I came from one of those programs too that's collateral duty, and I think it's been quite beneficial. So I'm very excited to talk to you about that today. So, like you asked me, who is eligible to participate in the Department of Defense Media Awards Program?
So, there was a little bit of confusion because the name was Defense Media Awards Program,
Oh, okay.
right? Those initials come up to DMA.
Right.
That confuses a lot of people.
Okay.
And so the very first thing, after doing this for a little bit, I asked Mr. Pittman, is there any reason we can't change this to DoD Media Awards Program? Because that's what it is. It's the DoD seal. It is Mr. Kirby's program. It is the SecDef. it's the DoD, and it's eligible to all DoD employees, the military, all of the what's known as the fourth estate. So all of the agencies and activities.
So like mine.
The COCOMs, it's the
absolutely.
same. Anyone who is a producer, and I use the word producer, we're on a set, but anyone who produces content for the DoD. So basically, if you've got a DIVIDS account and you upload to it, or you should, if they're not, they should be, they're eligible to enter. And so each of the services have their own, feeder programs, and so they enter into that. At the branch level, it's a little confusing, and that's why I'm glad we're getting a chance to talk about it. It even still confuses me, and I've been doing it for a year. The other competition that's not the service competition is the DMMAs, and that's the DoD, basically the defense, that is the Defense Motion Media Awards Program, and that's the branch level for all of those fourth estate.
Okay.
So that's the feeder program that they have to go through to get into the DoD level. So there's 9 categories at the DoD level, but there are many categories,
obviously
obviously in the Navy, the Air Force, the Army, and all of those.
I didn't even give Navy a shout out. Who y'all, Navy?
So you got to go through a branch level
Right.
competition to get up there.
Okay.
But I also help out with those. So a lot of customer service stuff behind the scenes. That's kind of what we're working on.
So going back to that concept of it's only 3 months and then you have nothing to do. We're sitting here in August, and it's not. This doesn't necessarily, all of the judging and all that doesn't take place for a while, but everything's done through a portal, right?
Yeah.
And when does that portal open, and when really does this year's program open for submissions?
So a couple things, and,
Okay.
and remind me because I'll get off track. I'm a little bit ADD. I want to talk a little bit about what's happening now.
Right, okay.
What's happening in that process. But the portal, usually for submissions, opened in January. And going back to our conversation about the reserves, they have an issue with sometimes that window to submit is not open long enough.
Okay.
And so when we would open in January, well, they may not drill in January, February, and then boom, Army portal closes.
Oh, okay.
We're going to try to back that up, right? So we're going to start in November. November 1st is our goal. It's for content that was produced during this calendar year. So if they create something in November, December, they would have to upload that, and they could change their entry. But for somebody who maybe did some fabulous work in March, April timeframe of this year, they could then submit in November and for the judging, which will happen in May of next year. So that's something we're looking to change and help the reserve field or any service that agrees to that and changes their submissions. What we're doing right now, we've already done the after actions. So we sit down with all the service chiefs and we sit down with the program managers and we talk about, okay, what you like, what you didn't like, what should change. And what we're doing now is building those changes into the system to make it more efficient. There's no major category changes. I don't think there's anything that's going to, rock people's worlds. But there are some changes that are going to make the submission process more efficient.
Okay.
And I think we're
And that's going on right now, even as we speak?
Yeah,
Okay,
so we're
cool.
currently working on the SOP. So those are the nomination guidances. Each of those, nomination guidance letters, they come from the service. And then I'm working on the DoD level. So we kind of put all that together, and that is the how to submit.
Oh, neat.
While they may be very complicated documents in some cases, Army, I think it's 68 pages long, the nomination guidance, but it's very thorough. So if you read it and you understand it, you can do it. But the actual submission process is not that tough. It's work you've done, and a user gets in and logs in and says, hey, I want to submit for a photo. All their photos pop up and they click the ones that they want, and then boop, it's done. Boop. That's,
I like boop.
I mean, that's how it's done.
That's how it's done.
So it's very simple.
Okay.
What I would say is, don't fight it. Just, we're never going to be able to recognize people for their exceptional work if we don't see their work. So if you don't submit, there's no way to win.
And
That's a sure.
no one can deny that content creators in the military, the Department of Defense, are truly exceptional.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think we're among the best in the country, even going toe-to-toe with our civilian counterparts out there. There's some talented people out there.
Yep. And I feel that there are a lot of talented people that we're not seeing their work because, for instance, you used NSA earlier. They don't submit because a lot of their content, while it's internal, it's still stuff they don't want the world to see. And that kind of sucks for them, But there are some units that just don't do it. They do have content that you need to submit. Not submit to the awards, you need to upload to DIVIDs. One is a DoD policy. But have an account, submit your stuff up online, get it on DIVIDs, and then it's just a submission process.
Well, I will tell you, you and I both have recently transitioned from active duty into the civilian sector. And there's a lot of resume prep. There's a lot of things that go into that transition. And an award such as a very high-level DoD Media Award would look great on some of those resumes. I'm talking to you guys out there. Because, like I said, our work is exceptional. The training that we get at DINFOS, and all of the stuff we're doing out there, covering our units and our organizations and our military. Maybe it does, I used to, one of the things that I used to think of when I was in uniform is, I do this because this is my job, and it's my job to tell the military story, to tell the Navy story. But it's okay to give yourself a little bit of, give yourself a little bit of props. That's probably not even a cool word anymore. To give yourself that recognition for all the hard work you do, because eventually you're going to leave uniform and have to get a job out in the civilian community. So let us recognize you. I think that's really important.
I think, having come from many units over the years, I think you just get so wrapped up in the mission. You've got one task and then you complete it, and before you are done, there's no time to breathe and go, you know what? Let me think about myself. And so you got another mission and you move on. What you got to do is just
take a minute.
Just take a minute to, like, as you're going through your year and you're like, you know what? That thing I did, I'm pretty proud of it. And then make a little note. And then at the end of the year, like maybe when things are a little bit slower, November, December timeframe, that's why we're trying to open it then. Take some time, get online and go in there and submit. And most services you can submit in multiple categories.
Oh, cool.
Okay. And so if you have an exceptional photo, but maybe it has a little illustration on it, you can enter that in both. So there are the rules are very, very specific and laid out. But there's no reason not to do it. And as a senior enlisted leader as well, there's nothing that makes you feel better than to give props and give accolades to some young, deserving, service member or DoD employee. It feels good to say, hey, you're awesome. Right. And then to have that command go, yeah, we've got the best.
So funny. We were talking about this before the show started, in that I remember being a young trooper at Kings Bay, at the submarine base at Kings Bay, Georgia, and I had this Chief Petty Officer, Stacy Byington. I don't know if you're out there watching it, but she forced me to submit every year. And we were talking about earlier how we had to cut it, paste it on some foam core, put it in an envelope.
It was painful.
It was a little painful. I mean, there was a lot of after hours work. I mean, and there's been a lot of changes since then, but I will tell you that it meant a lot to me for one of my leaders to say, you've done really good work, you really do need to submit. So I'm not only going to challenge all of those
that's where it starts.
Content creators out there to submit, but you leaders out there, look at the stuff that your people are doing and really, force their hand. Tell them how much you appreciate them by getting them to submit. I think that's part of being a leader, is to recognize your people, and so I'm gonna challenge all of you all out there to recognize your people. But
that's the education process. Quite honestly,
you're right.
A lot of young troops,
which is why we're here today.
New employees don't know that it's available, and so it takes somebody who's a little more seasoned that goes, you know what, this program is here. I've read up on it. It's actually pretty simple, and we need to gather around. Let's get a plan together, and let's help you submit your best content. And that's where it starts.
So lots changed since those days when we were cutting things out, putting it on the wax roller, putting it on those. using the glue sticks.
Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about the changes with opening up the window. Are there any other changes you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so the services have some, each service has kind of their own thing. A lot of it is just to identify efficiencies in managing the program. For instance, if a disqualification comes in, if they feel it's flagged for disqualification for whatever reason, that used to have to go all the way up to the branch level and be approved or, concurred upon and then kicked out. They're working to change that so the unit level can do that, so that there's a little bit of review process, things like that. So we're trying to make the program, and I say we, collectively, the Dave Steeles and Kristen Duez's and the people who are out there running these for their service are trying to make it better. And we did a very long, it was about a 4-hour after action that we sat down and went through. And no one wants to sit through a conference call like that, but it's
important.
It's the necessary step to make it better next year. And that's what we intend to do. So another thing this is something that I recommended that we do in all services. Obviously, we're like, yes, it benefits the end user, so I'm all about it. It's to incorporate some training. So I want to do some classes later in the year and help people.
MTT program.
Yeah, and help them understand how to go in and submit. And then the Divids developers, they ponied up and said, hey, what about if we create a mock training session online that you could submit and you could show and walk through it? And I was like, see, that's what I'm talking about. It's the how do we help make this process better? And so we're working on those things behind the scene.
There's a reason why we're talking about the MTT program in your program today. I see
they've got some
possibilities
similarities
here in the future where we can work together a little bit more than just on this set.
Yeah, good stuff. So those are a couple. I got some notes here. I think I hit the main ones. I do want to talk about the DMMAs, and that's another thing that is very confusing because that's that feeder.
DMMA
is the branch level feeder for all the DoD employees, but also a unit submission. Okay, so for like an Army unit that's somewhere and they have a unit long form and short form video, they also submit into that. So it's very complicated, and there's really no way to streamline it because the Army doesn't have those categories. Okay. So that program, my goal is to increase participation. There are 32 DAFAs, or the combatant commands and the agencies and activities, right? So 32 total. On average, each year, and I'm looking back at historical submissions, no more than 7 participate of the 32. And so my goal is to kind of increase participation with them, try to get more submissions, and then, develop what would get more participation, to do sort of an after action with them, because right now, quite honestly, it's 850 of those producers are from this organization, and it is what it is. The DMA has a worldwide reach, 850 producers around the world.
But it's our mission too here.
It is. But there's a misconception that it's designed for DMA, and it's not. They just submit a lot of stuff because they're producing.
So we're talking like DFAS and DISA and those kind of guys. Cool.
DFAS actually is one of the units
I was going to say, DFAS usually submits, right?
They do, and they had a couple winners this year at the top level. So
congratulations, DFAS.
And some unique, really unique categories. One of them is a blog post and commentary.
Oh, nice.
And that's the only branch level that has those categories. And we did that because a lot of these units, that's what they're doing. They're doing blogs and they're doing commentaries.
I like blogs myself, but so speaking of past winners and stuff,
online questions
we have an online
too.
question.
You got a lot of online questions.
Well, you got the earpiece host.
That's why I just told you. Yeah, let's do that.
What we got, Sergeant Witten?
All right. Well, since you just mentioned categories, we got a question from Kenneth Fisher asking what categories or what awards are there in the DoD Awards Program?
Okay, so the DoD is a good question, and like I said, it's very complicated because there are so many feeder categories. Okay, so the DoD level, the top 9 level, are focused on photography, so military and civilian, and then you got videography, military, civilian, graphic design, military, civilian. So these all services go together. So there are 5 at that level that get narrowed down to the top 1, the best in the DoD. Okay, so those 9 are those. I think I just did 4. Here we go with math again. This is where
I think that was like 6.
So that was 4 categories, 2 each, right?
Okay.
8. Okay.
And then there's 9. That's an odd number. Where's the last one?
That's the communicator of the year, and that is a combination of all those disciplines. So it could be videography, print, a little bit of everything. I think print I missed. Okay, so writer, photographer, videographer, graphic design, and then
then
the one who does all
Eureka.
of that the best, which is basically the perfect MCF graduate, right? Who can do a little bit of everything, and they go out, and now they're a perfect candidate to submit for Communicator of the Year. None of those can go into the DoD program directly. They have to
Okay.
go through a feeder program.
Okay.
That's something.
Wow.
Okay.
Do you remember who it was last year? Can you remember that offhand? I'm putting him on the spot. I don't want to do that. Don't
I just
do it.
did the trophies. They just
Sorry.
got delivered. So
We just-
congratulations to everybody who's out there
Absolutely.
who just won. We did just put them in the mail, and they should have
Oh,
arrived
good.
this week. So
Okay, cool.
appropriate level of
Hold it up if you
command
haven't.
recognition will happen
Absolutely.
there. So, and you
Which
got
is why
more.
we drove to Camp Lejeune that time.
Yeah.
Was to
From
deliver
old Matt Callahan.
award
his-
to Matt Callahan.
That dude won both video and photographer
That's
of the
scary.
year
He was good
for
though.
military. It was a first.
Yeah, so that was the reason why we drove the pizza truck to Camp Lejeune
Yeah.
to deliver that award. So speaking of past winners, oh, we got more.
We got a whole bunch of them, Freddie.
Oh, see, I knew you were gonna have more questions than
And
me.
we could talk all day long, but I really want to answer
Yeah,
their questions
absolutely.
too. So
If I actually have one, I'd like to
Okay.
dig a little bit further on the category ones. You say there's like the super categories, the ones near the top.
Yeah.
So within those, is it get more specific? Like, say I just created a product. It is just a B-roll package of some sort.
Yep.
There's a category. Is it broken down that specifically? Like, oh, here's best B-roll, best news story, best such and such, and then those get combined and they go to best video product, or I'm just
No.
guessing. You're
No,
the
so
expert.
there are actual feeder categories within each service that do feed directly into. So if it's a communicator of the year, each service has a communicator of the year. So it's not a combination of a service bunch of categories that then make that. Those are specifically designed and they're in place for every service. So Coast Guard, everyone has them. I do have just a little bit of a cheat sheet because, for instance, the Navy has 42 individual categories. Only 9 of those feed up into the DoD. But those are 42 different categories that people could be recognized. You were talking about them, I think on another show, we were talking about the stringers or the,
Oh yeah, yeah.
you know what I'm talking about? They're not really, they're like PAO by job billet, but not really by MOS. They have categories for them.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so there's, the Coast Guard has 24, Air Force 35, Marine Corps 28. The Army is the exception because them in the National Guard, they have very few categories, and they have no individual categories. So if you're an amazing photographer and you take a picture, there's no category within the Army that Keith
But it
Hale
goes
wears.
towards their unit.
Right.
Okay.
So you just got to be really careful in what you look at, and every unit or every service is specific. So that's where you need to go back and look at those nomination guidances and read and like what, because that's a big error that we get every year.
Right.
People are like, hey, I'm trying to submit, and it's saying, product not valid, or it's not allowing me to. It's because it doesn't fit the criteria that service has set, and we'll help you through it.
So I know we had talked about, we have this planned later on in our questioning, but now probably is a good time that there is a place people can go to read up more
Yeah.
on that, and we'll talk about that. We can talk about it now, or we can wait and take his question.
Well, we got one more that's kind of, I think it's a good timing for that one. So
Okay.
we have Eric Crosby asking, for anyone who's a little unfamiliar with this awards program, is there like a ready-made packet or a PowerPoint or a presentation, something that can be looked at and like, oh, there it is. There's
Yeah,
the
that's
chart
actually-
of
that's
Which
everything.
is where what I was talking about.
Yeah, so I think if we in the
Thanks,
control
Eric.
room, if we can hit that, we've got a graphic, or a graphic. It's a little link, right?
There it is. It's up there.
That's where you want to go, okay? And if you don't have the time to write that down and you're driving or something, here's a life hack. If you're in 2021, you need to be able to Google something.
Do the Googles.
So look up DoD Media Awards, leave a space, and type DIVIDS. And that's it. It will come up.
DVIDS, yes.
Yep, DVIDS.
Cool.
And after you put in, DoD Awards Program, 2 things are going to come up. You're going to see some feedback, right? We're going to talk about that in a little
Okay.
bit. So that tells us like who won and why, straight from the judge's mouth. And we did it live in here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that too.
Yeah, so we can. So there's that. There's also, oh man, what else? All the reference material, right? So all of those guidances and nomination SOPs and stuff like that. But also the DoD style guide is in that page.
Okay, cool.
Past winners is on that page, are on that page. Good grammar, yeah. And then also, probably most important, there's some how-to files. And those how-to
There you
files
go.
are sort of your, hey, I've got a problem, I don't know how to do it. DIVIDS has a wealth of like, here's how it's done. And I also created a group on Facebook that is specific to helping people through it. So if you go onto Facebook and you look in groups, look up, so you got to spell this one out. I didn't want to make it DoD.
Right.
So Department of Defense Awards Program. If you just search that, the group will come up. Okay.
Oh, I didn't even know that was on. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interaction, and a lot of other people, will ask a question, and then someone might have had that, that experience, and so it'll get answered by other users, or I'll go on and do it, or the help team. There is a help desk. It's a lot of people don't know it. When you call the DIVIDS help desk, there's actually a team of people up in Tobyhanna, Pennsylvania. And a lot of people don't know this, but that's where our customer service team is up there. So I'm also going to
we definitely have to give a shout out to them because they work so hard, and
they're all over the place. Like all
absolutely.
the public web stuff are now whatever.
Web.gov, web.
Yeah, I don't know, something like that. Anyway, they're new. They're standing it up. But that help desk takes care of all those trouble
Awesome.
tickets, and also all of the award submission trouble tickets. And then I go in and QA and QC and try to
nice.
help
Okay.
make sure those are getting answered right and see them through. I told you we'd be all over the place. Like this is it's convoluted
But I think
program.
that URL is really, really important. It's like to get you into
Lots of good reference
that
material.
reference material, and really you're just scratching the surface today. But
Yep. Yes,
what
ma'am.
else you got for us? You got another one?
Let's see. We got Dan Sanford. Actually, hey, that's a cool.
This
little-
guy. Yeah, another tall dude.
Take a deep breath before you ask this one.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say that's my hometown, Sanford. So
Oh, there you go.
cool. Where can
Dan.
people send any feedback or suggestions for the DoD Media Awards?
Good question, Dan Sanford. And thanks for asking. So the best thing is to reach out to your service.
Okay.
Because the services do, it's just like DINFOS. I mean, they say, hey, this is what we need trained. They set the requirements. They also set the rules for the service level competition. So first step is go to your service. If you're overseas and you're with an Army unit, go to the Army. If you're with a Marine Corps unit, go to the, et cetera, et cetera. That's a first step. But if you have something at the DoD level you would like, please contact me. Go to that site. There's a link at the bottom that'll link you up. It's a, what do you call those? OMB mailbox, like an organizational mailbox.
Oh, okay.
And so I monitor that, and I'll definitely take it into consideration. Some things are very far-fetched that I get, and like I said, the worst I can say is, yeah, no, there's reasons we can't do that or whatever.
But at least there's dialogue.
Right. It's
Absolutely.
basically, people ask like, what is the program? And I've associated it with like, it's the Emmys of the DoD. It's that
Nice.
level of the competition before DoD employees.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think that's it for social, right?
Is that it?
I have a little
I
something.
do believe for now, yes.
All right,
Okay.
so we
But the
talked a little bit about the past winners. Those are posted on there with some feedback on why they won.
Yep.
But are there, can you see their submissions as well? Can you see what won? Or is it just data?
Yeah,
Or is
so-
it their actual submission?
So if you go, this is another one where we've got a link that you go to, and I've got to look at it here because they're very, very similar. But if you go into that dividshub.net, to navigate to it, you go over to Storytellers and then go down to Media Awards, and that's how you
Okay.
physically navigate to it. The link is on your screen.
There you go.
But that's where you can see past winners. You can see first, second, third place. It goes back to 2016.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So all that archival data
we
and
were
stuff
still
is
in uniform then.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we
I know.
were.
So you can see what is won, and then a step further, again, search DoD Awards feedback, and then put DIVIDS on it, and you can actually find all of the 4 live feedback shows that we've done. And you can, if you do a good enough search, you can actually find the previous years as well. So
Okay, cool.
all those are raw and uncut. You can hear me stumbling through them. Again, it's not an MOS job that I have. It's just something that I do. So we managed. We got through it, but the important part was it was good feedback for for people who submit, whether you won or not. The judges talked about what they liked and what they didn't, or maybe some background on, well, I saw this and it really threw me off because I didn't think it was shot by you. I thought it was too much archival footage. And if it's, for instance, videographer of the year and it's not video you shot, that threw the judges off. So their raw and honest feedback is out there for all to see.
Feedback is always good.
That's the whole part of
Right.
this. It's it's a two-part thing, to recognize the great producers and stuff that they do, but also to educate and inform and help others get to that level.
So that leads us to really the end of, unless you have some more for us, Sergeant Winton, are we good?
None queued up.
Really, if we can throw that URL maybe up there one more time where you can find more information about the Department of Defense Media Awards Program.
That'll be,
oh, goodness.
Look who's
What in the world?
creeping up on the
Really?
set.
Oh, I'm
Really?
I didn't know you guys were having a show.
I think your event's next week, one day.
No, I'm sorry.
So I think you're in the wrong place, but
making
we're done
sure.
here. But we've got a visitor. It looks like.
Oh.
So come on up
on
here.
in,
Let's
Kwande.
wrap this part up. Definitely go to that link. Check it out. Kwande, come on in here, man. Let's talk a little bit about social media forum.
Okay.
It's coming up
do it.
next week.
Which is why we were a week early this week.
Yeah,
but,
so we bumped to accommodate you, and I'm glad we did because that's super important.
thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having me. Thanks for-
Can people still register, or is it? I mean, has it been closed out, or is it?
Oh, no. We've got just shy of 1,400 registrations going on right now.
Wow.
And it's still open. It's a virtual forum, obviously. So, the more the merrier. We're looking forward to a great, exciting show. But yeah, you can go online right now to Hay Summit and register. And
I think we have the link online
link
for
there?
you right there. They just put it up there.
somewhere. Okay. Yeah. We got some exciting conversations happening. For some of the people, a little surprise change. I got a interview with the TRADOC commanding officer.
Oh,
So
that'd be cool.
that swapped out if you signed up for the round table.
Is that
okay. So you don't have
Free
to
stuff?
re-sign up for that one.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
no. It's there. So if you haven't signed up to hear from him, it'd be kind of a great
Nice.
conversation. But yeah, I got some good people from both industry and military, and should be
Yeah, I'm
exciting.
definitely looking forward to
Yeah.
it. Any idea how many people you guys signed up so far?
Like I said, just shy of 1,400 right now.
You said that already, and I missed it.
Yeah,
So.
no
Yeah.
problem.
Wow.
Is there a capacity? Like, do you have to tap out at some point?
No,
or is it,
no, not at all.
Okay. It's the beauty of
like I
virtual,
said,
right?
It'll be all virtual. The more the merrier. I know we had a few issues last year with YouTube access, but we're not using YouTube this year. Although we will post to YouTube if you guys don't catch it on the day of. We'll still have it on YouTube. We'll be streaming on the Facebook group page as well. So you can join us there, join the conversation there. We'll be probably starting the discussion actually this week. So,
Okay, cool.
Okay.
yeah.
Good
Speaking
stuff.
of YouTube, one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is we know it's really hard for people to get this show live sometimes at the time that we air it, but we do put all of our episodes on the DINFOS official YouTube page. And so you can watch this one, or you can go back and watch the very first one where we featured Mr. Kwande Hall on that one. But are you planning to put those on our YouTube page again after
Yeah,
that
they'll be,
too?
like I said, after the show, and actually during the show, what we'll do is we'll do simultaneous.
Oh, nice,
We're kind of
okay.
hitting it from all angles here. So we'll post to YouTube, make sure that people can have access to it after the fact. Because, of course, everything is scheduled, but we've got people overseas who have signed up for it. People
Right.
who want to see it later, depending on their work
Right.
schedule and all that stuff. So they can either access it again through the links, or they'll get through YouTube channel and get through Facebook group page. So trying to get the information out there as much as possible. So.
Well, thanks for stopping by and wandering in. I'm like, wait a minute, we already gave you our week, and now you're in ours.
I was just making sure, the studio was set up the way we needed it, just in case.
You just never know what's
You
going to
never know,
happen.
you know?
Absolutely. But thanks for having me, Chad. That was fun.
Yeah, no, thank you.
You can have your
Kwande.
job back.
Thanks for stopping by. Thanks. I actually prefer that seat, not the interview. One more thing we want to remind you about, DINFOS is actually still accepting nominations for the Hall of Fame for the class of 2021. The last day you can submit for that is September 30th. So get online if you know of somebody who has excelled within the field of communication, public affairs related. There's a form, fill that thing out. There's a website for you that you can get on and go to that, and please submit those because we want to be able to recognize those and get their picture up on the wall. And we got a
That's
whole
pretty exciting.
luncheon plan and everything, so that'll be really cool. So Mel, thanks for coming by.
No
Thanks
worries.
for all
I
that
do have
information.
one more item because
Sure
I
you
think
do.
it's really, really important. Mel, I always have something to say. But I do want to let everybody know that next month we'll be featuring some of our intermediate level photojournalism instructors who are going to come talk about visual storytelling, which I think goes right in line with your awards program. But that's going to be at our normal time next month.
So last Wednesday of next month,
Right.
and that goes back to one of those questions that was asked too. Will you have more towards the
Right.
video and photographer?
So our crazy cats from the intermediate photojournalism course are going to be.
That ought to be an
here.
entertaining one.
It will
I've
be
met these
entertaining, and
dudes.
I'm going to be on that side. So.
Yeah, I don't blame you. Okay, Kwande, thanks for coming by. Thanks for all the people here in the studio and those of you out there. Again, the conversation continues online, so if you do have questions, please ask them. Go onto the Facebook page, go to YouTube or wherever, ask those questions. Give us your feedback. Again, we don't claim to be professionals at this. We're just doing the best we can to
fun.
educate the field and pass along information. So with that, we're going to wrap up the show. Sergeant Witten, thank you for helping out with those questions, and thank you all for the questions that you sent in. That, folks, is our show. We'll see you here next month. Okay, calling it.